I trusted my husband for 10 years. Until my cousin accidentally sent me their selfies from a weekend trip I knew nothing about. I need to start this by saying I was the problem. Not him. Never him. Me. 10 years. That's how long Marcus and I were together before I destroyed it in a single weekend. And the worst part is that I knew exactly what I was doing the entire time. I wasn't fooled. I wasn't confused. I was making a choice, one small lie after another, until I looked and realized I'd built an entire second that only I knew about. We got married when I was 26. Marcus was 28, and he was exactly the kind of guy who doesn't come around often. Patient. Thoughtful. He remembered how I took my coffee. He showed early to pick me. He called his mother on Sundays, but didn't let her guilt him. He had a job he liked at an architecture firm, a dog he loved named Bailey, and dreams that didn't revolve around proving anything to anyone. He was just solid. Good, the kind of person who makes want to be better because they already see as better than are. We had 2 kids. Emma is 8 now. Liam just turned 6. They have his eyes and his patience, which is both beautiful and now unbearably cruel to witness. But I'm getting ahead of. The problem started. Or maybe it didn't start at all. But rather it was always there in me, somewhere deep. I've been thinking about this for months, trying to pinpoint the exact moment I became someone capable of doing this. Was it when I looked in the mirror one day and felt invisible? Was it when I realized that being a good wife and good mother meant my own had shrunk down to school runs, grocery lists, and the same 4 conversations with the same group of moms at pickup? Was it when I ran into Tyler at the gym? Tyler. God. Even typing his name makes me feel sick and angry and ashamed and electrified all at once. He was new to our gym. 34, recently divorced. With that kind of confidence that comes from being wanted. He'd catch my eye in the mirror while I was on the treadmill. He'd say things like, crushing it today. And I'd feel my stomach flip in a way it hadn't in years. At first, I told it was harmless. Compliments. Attention. The kind of thing that made me feel like I wasn't just the woman who wiped noses and negotiated bedtimes. I started going to the gym more. I told Marcus I was being healthier. He was proud of me. He'd kiss my forehead and say he was glad I was taken care of. Every kiss felt like a betrayal because I knew exactly why I was really going. Tyler got my number through a mutual acquaintance. At first, the texts were casual. Workout tips. A funny meme. Then they became late-night conversations about how I felt misunderstood, how I wasn't really the person everyone thought I was, how there was this other version of me that nobody saw. It was intoxicating. Someone was interested in the hidden version of me. Someone was curious. Someone desired me. I told Marcus I had work meetings. I told him my friend Sarah needed me. I told him I was tired. Lies, so many lies, and they became so easy that I stopped even counting them. I'd look at him sitting on the couch, helping Liam with his homework, and instead of feeling guilty, I felt resentful. I felt like he didn't deserve my honesty, because he didn't see all of me. He had chosen the limited version of me, and that was somehow his fault. That's the part that makes me want to when I think about it. Now, I had constructed an entire narrative where my betrayal was justified. Because he wasn't meeting some even me that I wouldn't even name. He wasn't the problem, I was. I am. But I spent months creating a story where he was. The crossing of the physical line happened on a Thursday night in October. I told him I was going out with Sarah. Tyler had booked a hotel room 40 minutes away. I sat in the hotel bathroom afterward and cried, but not because I felt guilty about Marcus. I cried because I finally felt like. Because I had finally done something just for me. Because someone wanted me in a way that felt urgent and immediate and had nothing to do with responsibility or duty. I went home. Marcus was asleep. I showered, scrubbing until my skin was raw. He woke when I got into bed, pulled me close, told me he loved me. I said it back. I felt nothing. I felt everything. I felt like a ghost haunting my own. I told it would never happen again. It would be a one-time thing, a moment of weakness, something I could compartmentalize and move past. But that's not how this works. Once step over that line, don't go back to the same side. Just find a new normal that includes deception as a basic operating system. It continued for 3 months. Every lie got easier. Every time Marcus said he was proud of me, or that I was the best thing that ever happened to him, I felt a sharp twist of something that wasn't quite guilt. It was more like contempt. For him for being so easily fooled. For becoming someone capable of fooling him. For the I had chosen that suddenly felt like a cage I was actively choosing to stay in while simultaneously having an affair outside the bars. My cousin Mia called on a Wednesday in January. She was excited, breathless. She'd just gotten back from a couple's weekend trip with her boyfriend, and wanted to tell me all about it. She'd run into my husband at the same resort with some friends. They'd all gone out to dinner together, she said. It had been so great seeing him. She was texting me a bunch of photos from the weekend. I went cold. I didn't remember Marcus mentioning a trip. He'd never mentioned a trip. I'd been with Tyler that weekend. We'd gotten a room at a cabin resort about 2 hours away. Nobody was supposed to know. Nobody was supposed to see us. I opened Mia's photo dump with shaking hands. And there he was, Marcus. At a restaurant I didn't recognize. With people I didn't know. Smiling in a way I hadn't seen him smile in months. And next to him in the photo, close enough that their shoulders were touching, was a woman I'd never seen before. My first thought was that maybe it was innocent. My second thought was that I had no right to think that, given what I'd been doing. But my third thought, the one that won out, was absolute. Crystalline clarity about what had just happened. Marcus had cheated. While I was cheating. While I was actively betraying him with Tyler. He had gone out of town with another woman, and at least had the decency to be photographed with her. I sat on the kitchen floor for an hour, just staring at that photo, and I realized something that has never left me since that moment. I didn't feel betrayed because he'd cheated. I felt betrayed because he'd cheated better than me. Because he'd managed something I couldn't, which was to separate from the we had, and do it without getting caught. Because he'd found a way to have both things and I'd been fumbling through my deception like an amateur, while he'd apparently been running an entire operation. But underneath even that, beneath the anger and the shock and the wounded pride, was the knowledge that I deserved this. Not because of some karmic cosmic justice, but because I had opened the door to betrayal in my own marriage. And Marcus had simply walked through it. I didn't confront him that day. I spent the whole night looking at that photo, zooming in on the woman's face. Wondering how long it had been happening. Wondering if he'd her the way he me. Wondering if she knew about his dreams, or if he'd told her things he'd never told me. When Marcus came home from work the next day, I felt like I was looking at a stranger. And the worst part was, he felt it too. He asked what was wrong. I told him nothing. I was good at lying by then. That night, as he slept, I made a decision that I thought would solve everything. I decided to tell him. I told him on a Saturday morning. The kids were at Marcus's parents' house for the weekend. Emma had a soccer game. Liam was going to help Grandma bake cookies. Marcus was making coffee in the kitchen when I said we needed to talk. I remember the way he turned toward me. The coffee maker still gurgling behind him. And I saw the exact moment. He knew something terrible was coming. That look on his face, that shift from normal to defensive, has become the image I replay most in my head at 3 a.m. I told him about Tyler. I told him about the texts, the hotel room, the 3 months. I told him everything, as if naming it would somehow make it smaller or more forgivable. It didn't. It made it massive and undeniable, and real in a way that hiding it had never let it be. He didn't yell. That's what I keep wishing he'd done. If he'd yelled, screamed, thrown something, called me and kicked me out, It might have matched the magnitude of what I'd done. Instead, he just set down his coffee cup very slowly and asked me to repeat it. So I did, twice, 3 times, each repetition another nail. Then I said, "I know about the woman at the resort." I watched his face go through something I can only describe as absolute collapse. He sat down on one of our kitchen chairs like his legs had stopped working. And he started crying. Not angry crying. Scared, confused, broken crying. And he told me that there was no woman. That Maya had been confused. That he'd gone to that resort with 3 guys from work. One of whom was named Jennifer. And they'd all had dinner together. That Jennifer was his colleague's wife. That nothing had happened. I felt the entire foundation of my self-righteousness crumble underneath me. I had confessed my 3-month affair based on a misunderstanding. I had destroyed my marriage, destroyed his trust, destroyed the basic safety and security of our family unit. Because I had misread a photo. And somehow, knowing that he hadn't done what I thought he'd done made my betrayal even worse, not better. It meant I had given permission to destroy us for no reason other than my own unhappiness. He asked me if I loved Tyler. I said no. He asked me why I did it. I couldn't answer. He asked me how many times. I said 3 times, which was a lie. It was 7 times. But I couldn't tell him that at that moment. He asked me if I'd used protection. I said yes. Which was another lie because we hadn't one of those times, and I'd spent a week in terror waiting for my period, praying to a God I don't believe in that I wouldn't be carrying another man's child. He left the house at around 10 a.m. He didn't tell me where he was going. He just walked out, got in his car, and left me standing in the kitchen with cold coffee and the realization that I had just blown my entire on a misunderstanding and a lie piled on top of another lie. He came back at 6 p.m. I'd texted him maybe 15 times. Nothing desperate, just, okay. And, please call me. And, I'm sorry. Repeated in different configurations like that would somehow make him forgive me. He hadn't responded to any of it. When he came back, there was a lawyer's card on the kitchen counter. He'd spent the day consulting about divorce proceedings. He was moving into the guest bedroom. He wanted to know what he needed to do to get full custody of the kids. He said he didn't think I was a bad mother, but he couldn't trust anything about me anymore, and he wasn't going to stay in a house with someone who was capable of this. I tried to talk to him. I tried to explain, to contextualize, to make him understand that I was just as much a victim of my own impulses as he was. He looked at me with an expression I'd never seen before and said, "You're not a victim here. We're the person who did this. Own it." That was worse than anything else. Because he was right. The next Monday, I had to tell my work that there might be some personal things affecting my ability to perform at my job. My boss, Karen, was sympathetic. She told me to take personal time if I needed it. I didn't tell her why I needed it. I couldn't say out loud to another person that I'd destroyed my marriage by cheating on my husband. I called Tyler. I told him it was over. That I'd told Marcus everything, that I couldn't see him anymore. He seemed confused more than anything else. He said, "It was just fun. What was the big deal?" And I realized that what I had risked everything for, what I had blown my family for, was just fun to him. A distraction. He didn't even understand why I was calling to end things. It took him a few days to stop texting me, and those texts were casual, unaffected. He never asked how I was doing, or if I was okay. He just eventually moved on to some other version of fun. Emma asked me that week why Daddy was sleeping in the guest room. I couldn't think of a lie that would work. I told her that Mommy and Daddy were having some problems and sometimes people need space. She asked if we were getting divorced. I said we didn't know yet. She cried. My 8-year-old daughter cried and asked if it was her fault somehow, and I had to tell her it wasn't while knowing that my actions were the direct cause of her pain. Liam asked Marcus why he was sad all the time now. Marcus told him the truth, age-appropriate version, which was that sometimes grown-ups make mistakes. Liam seemed to accept this with the simplicity of a 6-year-old. But I watched him watch me after that. And there was a distance in his eyes that hadn't been there before. I'd become the source of his father's sadness. And he was old enough to understand cause and effect. Marcus stopped talking to me almost entirely. We communicated through logistics. I'll take the kids Wednesday to Friday. Emma needs new cleats. The school called about Nian's behavior. Cold, efficient, nothing extra. He was methodical about his distance, and I realized he was grief-stricken. He wasn't angry. He was devastated. He was mourning the version of me he'd believed I was and the marriage he'd believed we had. My mother called him. She told me later that she'd tried to advocate for forgiveness. That everyone makes mistakes. That we had 2 kids depending on us to work things out. Marcus had thanked her and said that trust wasn't something could rebuild overnight, that he needed to think about whether he could ever not feel this way when he looked at me, and that he wasn't sure the answer was yes. My mother stopped calling me after that. When I texted her, she responded with guilt-soaked politeness. That was somehow worse than anger. I'd embarrassed her. She'd raised me better than this. What would she tell her friends? I'd turned into the kind of woman she'd always warned me about. The kind who weigh a good marriage for excitement. I tried to file for a divorce first, thinking it might somehow preserve some of my dignity or agency in the situation. Marcus's lawyer responded by filing his own petition where he requested primary custody, and that I pay spousal support. Because he'd been the stable income earner, while I'd been pursuing my career. It was tactical and it was calculated, and it was the kind of thing Marcus had never been capable of before. I pushed him to become that person. The social media part started slowly. I don't know exactly how, but someone from our social circle must have told someone, who told someone else. First, I noticed that a bunch of people had unfollowed me. Then I saw that Sarah, my supposed close friend who I'd used as a cover story dozens of times, had posted something cryptic about finding out who real friends are. And, because if the truth comes out, with no other context, I knew what it meant. Then the mom group in my neighborhood started excluding me from things. I'd see photos from nights I wasn't invited to. I'd pick Emma from school and other parents would lower their voices when I approached. I became the woman who cheated on her good husband. And that became my entire identity in a space where I'd lived and raised my children for 8 years. Emma came home from school and told me that Madison said her mom told her that I was bad. I asked what she meant by bad. She said bad like liars. Bad like people who don't keep promises. She said Madison said her mom said that's why her parents weren't together anymore. I held my daughter and let her cry, and I didn't correct her because the 8-year-old version of the truth was actually just the truth. 6 months into the separation, Marcus started dating someone. Her name was Rebecca. She seemed nice when I'd see her picking the kids, or when she'd come to school events. She was probably a nice person. I found consumed with hatred for her. Not because she'd done anything to me, but because she got to have the version of Marcus that was still good. Before I'd broken him. She got the thoughtful, patient man who called his mother on Sundays. She got him while he was still capable of trusting. The worst part was that Emma liked her. She told me about Rebecca helping her with her math homework. She told me about the funny thing Rebecca had said at dinner. And I watched my daughter bond with this woman who got to be in the home that I'd destroyed. And I felt something close to insanity. Marcus agreed to go to therapy. Not couples therapy with me, but individual therapy, because he needed to understand why he'd been vulnerable enough to my deception. The therapist helped him see that he hadn't been blindsided out of stupidity. He'd been in a marriage with someone who was actively lying to him. And he hadn't seen it because he had no framework for believing that I was capable of that. His trauma wasn't that he was naive. His trauma was that his wife had made him knave. I went to therapy too, to a different therapist. Because Marcus didn't want me in the same therapeutic space. My therapist kept trying to get me to look at my childhood, my insecurities, the ways I'd been made to feel invisible or unworthy. And maybe all of that was true. But I kept coming back to the same thing. I chose this. Every single moment of it, I chose this. The therapy started to feel like another way of avoiding responsibility. The divorce papers came through in month 9. Marcus got primary custody. I got every other weekend. He didn't ask for spousal support ultimately, which somehow felt worse than if he had. It would have been cleaner. Instead, he just wanted to be untangled from me as efficiently as possible. I moved into a 1-bedroom apartment near my office. It was quiet in a way that felt like punishment. I'd spend weekends without my kids sitting on the couch in that apartment, scrolling through social media, watching Marcus's new unfold. He and Rebecca seemed happy. Emma tagged him in posts from school events where she was smiling. Liam played soccer on Saturdays, and Marcus was on the sidelines with Rebecca, and they both cheered for him. I'd become the person who lost her family. Not because of circumstance. Because of choice. Because I'd decided that my own unhappiness was more important than the promise I'd made to the man who had me so completely that he'd rearranged his entire around the version of me that turned to be a lie. And the thing that keeps me awake at night, the thing that has basically ruined me from the inside out, is that I'm still not sure I made the right choice in confessing. Because I think sometimes in darker moments about what would have happened if I'd just lied better. If I'd deleted the texts more carefully. If I'd ended things with Tyler sooner. If I'd just committed to the deception and gotten better at it. I think about that version of where I was still the primary parent to my children, where I still got to sleep in the bed I'd shared with Marcus for a decade, where I didn't see pity in my mother's eyes when she looked at me. And I for thinking that way, because it means I still haven't learned the most important lesson. The most important lesson is that trust, once broken, doesn't just damage the person betrayed, it poisons everything in its path. 2 years later, I'm 36 years old, and I don't recognize the person I've become. I wake in my apartment alone on Friday mornings, knowing that in a few hours, the kids will arrive for their weekend with me. I used to look forward to these weekends. Now I dread them because I can see so clearly how much they'd rather be anywhere else. Emma is 12 now. She's learned to be polite to me, but the lightness is gone from her interactions with me. There's a guardedness. She doesn't tell me her secrets anymore. She doesn't come to me when she's scared. She goes to Rebecca. My daughter has chosen someone else to be her maternal figure, and I can't blame her, because Rebecca hasn't destroyed her world. Liam is 8, and he's developed a stutter that his school counselor says is likely stress-related. He started it about 6 months after the divorce was finalized. Marcus thinks it might have something to do with the instability of the separation. But I know the truth. It's because his mother was the cause of the instability. He stutters when he talks to me now, and every time I hear it, I feel like I'm suffocating. I've tried to be a good mother in these weekends. I take them places. I cook their favorite foods. I help with homework. But there's something fundamental that's been severed, and no amount of trying can fix it. Emma is starting to understand what I did, now that she's old enough to piece together the fragments of truth that exist in the real world. She knows I cheated. She might not know all the details, but she knows enough. I see it in the way she looks at me sometimes, with this mixture of pity and disappointment that is so much worse than anger. Liam still doesn't fully understand. And that's almost worse, because I have to watch him figure it out gradually. He'll ask questions like, "Why did Daddy move to a different house?" And I have to give him answers that are true, but not complete. The incomplete truth is its own kind of lie, and I'm getting very good at those. Marcus moved on properly. He and Rebecca got married last year. It was a small ceremony, intimate, just family and close friends. I wasn't invited, obviously. Emma and they were there as part of the wedding party. Emma sent me a photo. She looked beautiful and genuinely happy. Liam looked confused and tired. I looked at that photo for hours, studying my daughter's smile like it was evidence of something I'd lost. Rebecca is pregnant. Emma told me excitedly during one of our weekends. She's going to be a big sister. She seemed genuinely thrilled about this. I congratulated her and smiled, and inside of me something broke a little more. Because I realized that Marcus was going to have another child. And that child would grow with the version of Marcus that I helped destroy. That child would have a father who is still fundamentally good but carries the weight of knowing that people can do terrible things too. That child would have a more stable start than my own children. But its father would be shaped by the wreckage of his first marriage. I did that. I made that happen. The worst part is how ordinary everything became. The divorce was finalized. The separation became the new normal. Nobody talks about it anymore. My mother still loves me. But there's a line between us that didn't used to be there. My father asked me once, quietly, if I had any regrets. I said yes. He nodded and never brought it again. He didn't need to. I understand what I did to his image of me. Work became the only place I could exist without constant reminder of my failure. I into my job. I started getting promotions. My boss thought I was motivated and driven. What I actually was running. I stayed late. I took on extra projects. I traveled for work when I could, anything to fill the hours that weren't occupied by the kids or sleep. Or the terrible spiraling thoughts that come at 3 a.m. I ran into Tyler once at a coffee shop about 18 months after everything fell apart. He was with a woman I didn't recognize. He was laughing. He seemed like he'd never experienced a moment of guilt in his entire. When he saw me, he waved. Actually waved, like we were old friends. I stood there in the line for coffee and realized that what I had destroyed my entire family for had been so inconsequential to him that he'd already moved past it. He was a marker on the timeline of his casual. I was a woman whose marriage had been annihilated. We were not having the same experience. I thought about going to him and asking him what he was doing now. Whether he ever thought about what happened. Whether he understood the magnitude of the damage. But I didn't. Because I already knew the answer. He didn't care. And caring or not caring was irrelevant anyway. Because I couldn't blame him for my choices. I had made the decision to betray my husband. I had made the decision to risk everything I had. He had just been convenient. The friends I had before all of this largely disappeared. A few of them tried to stay connected, but it was awkward and strained. Eventually, we all just let it fade. I became someone defined by my failure. And there's only so long people want to maintain a friendship that reminds them how quickly someone can become unrecognizable. I've been on a few dates. Nothing serious. I can't seem to let anyone get close enough to me or to them. I've got this wall that I'm aware of constantly but can't seem to lower. I'm terrified of becoming the person I was, but I'm also aware that I don't fully understand what made me that person. So I have no real insurance policy against doing it again. A therapist I saw for a brief period suggested that maybe I self-sabotaged my marriage because on some level I didn't believe I deserved to be happy. That I'd created a situation where I could confirm my own unworthiness. That's probably true. But knowing it's true doesn't actually change anything about the fact that I did it. Or that the damage is permanent. Emma is at an age now where she's starting to develop her own moral compass. She's reading books that talk about consequences and choices. She's doing school projects about integrity. And I watch her, and I see her thinking about these concepts in the context of her own. And I wonder how much of her understanding of right and wrong is shaped by having and watched the mother wrong thing possible and having to live with the aftermath of that. I sometimes imagine what my would look like if I'd just been honest. If I'd sat down with Marcus one day and said, "I'm unhappy, and I need things to change," instead of going outside the marriage and looking for fulfillment in another person's bed. Maybe we would have worked things out. Maybe we would have realized we needed to separate. But we would have done it with some dignity intact. Maybe Marcus wouldn't have become someone capable of using a lawyer to protect himself from me. Maybe my children wouldn't be carrying this weight of knowing what their mother was capable of. But I'll never know that version of the story because I chose this one instead. The custody arrangement is still the same. Every other weekend. One night during the week where I pick them from school and take them to my apartment. Marcus is exquisitely polite about logistics. He's never late picking them. He responds promptly to messages about the kids. He's the model co-parent, and it's all because I taught him that he couldn't trust me, so he had to control everything else. Liam's stutter has gotten better. But he still stammers when he's nervous. He doesn't stammer around Rebecca. I watched him at Emma's soccer game last month. Talking to Rebecca about the game, no stutter at all. Fluent and easy and confident. With me, there's still that hesitation. Emma asked me last month if I thought Daddy was happy with Rebecca. I said yes, I thought he was. She asked if I'd ever asked him. I said no. She asked if he'd ever tried to ask me that question back, about whether I was happy. I couldn't answer that without lying, so I didn't answer at all. The thing about living with what's done is that don't get to heal in any clean way. Don't get to point to a moment where learned lesson and moved on. Just get to carry it every single day. In the way daughter flinches when try to hug her. In the way son stutters around. In the knowledge that there's a whole other child somewhere in the world who will never exist if hadn't blown marriage. I deleted all the photos of Marcus and me off my social media about a year after the divorce was finalized. I couldn't stand seeing them anymore. All those moments of genuine happiness preserved in digital form. All that evidence of what I'd thrown away. But I kept one. Just one. It's me and him, and the kids at Emma's 5th birthday party. We're all laughing. I'm leaning into him. He's got his arm around me and his head is tilted toward mine. Emma is in the middle making a silly face. Liam is blurry because he was moving. It's a perfect snapshot of a family that no longer exists. I look at that photo sometimes and I wonder who that woman is. The one smiling into the camera. I wonder if I would have been capable of doing this to her if I'd known, then, what I know now. And the answer is that I wouldn't have needed to know. I just would have needed to care enough to choose differently in that moment. And every moment after. Marcus married Rebecca because Rebecca was something I wasn't. Or maybe because she was something I used to be, and I forgot how to be trustworthy. She didn't make him feel paranoid, or questioning, or doubtful of his own perception of reality. She didn't spend months planning an elaborate lie. She just showed and was honest, and didn't need to look for excitement outside of the they were building together. I think about that sometimes, about what it means to be someone worth staying for, and I think the answer is just that don't make a choice that says or not worth staying for. And I made that choice. I made it consciously. I made it repeatedly. I made it until the only option left was to live with the consequence of having made it. My mother asked me 6 months ago if I thought I'd ever fall in love again. I told her I didn't know. She said, "I hope do. I hope get to know that feeling again." But I think what she meant was, I hope get a second chance at happiness because I can't stand watching suffer like this. And what I heard was, I hope someone loves despite what's shown to be capable of. Which is a different thing entirely. The truth is that I do think about Marcus sometimes, still. I think about the versions of conversations we might have had if I'd been brave enough to have them, instead of sneaking around. I think about the anniversary date that came and went without acknowledgement. I think about the person he was before I made him into someone who checks the background of every woman he dates, who has walls with people he loves, who had to learn that the person he trusted most was capable of sophisticated, sustained deception. But mostly I think about my kids. I think about the way Emma's face has changed from open and trusting to guarded and careful. I think about the way Liam still looks for me even though he doesn't quite trust me anymore. I think about the fact that I've taught them that love isn't safe, that people depend on can destroy the foundation of world, that sometimes the person who's supposed to protect is the one who's going to most. I don't have a redemption arc to offer. I haven't found Jesus or gotten sober or discovered some great truth that makes all of this make sense. I'm still just a woman in an apartment alone on Friday nights, before the kids arrive, trying to figure out how to be someone they won't eventually resent for the damage I've already done. I'm still just someone who away the best thing that ever happened to her, because she wanted to feel and stable, and safe, and loved. And if I'm being completely honest, which I apparently owe the world after lying so much, the worst part isn't the divorce or the loneliness or even the way my kids look at me now. The worst part is that I'd be the same person doing the same thing if I hadn't gotten caught. Because getting caught isn't the same as understanding what did, and I'm still not sure I understand.